Ladies and gentlemen, do you know the problem with Firestrike? It's not bloody punishing enough. That's the problem with Firestrike. And so, in an effort to correct this, Futuremark have released the first Ultra HD benchmark, which of course targets 4K displays. Well, actually it's more appropriate to say the 4K resolution, because the great news is you don't need a 4K monitor. Firestrike Ultra will actually render at 3840 by 2160, only to downscale natively to your resolution, for example 1080p. The only requirement is your graphics card has to have at least 3 GB of memory on board. Now, to give you an idea of the difference of just how much more punishing the Ultra is, well, if you were to look at graphics test 1, it's handling 9.9 million triangles. With the Ultra, it's handling 12.4 million. 400 million, that would be the number of pixels in graphics test 2. 1100 million, also known of course as over 9,000 pixels. Okay, I'm being a bit silly, but my point remains the same. This test is going to be absolutely ridiculously punishing. In fact, it's not the only things that are being cranked up. Now, generally speaking, the shadow map resolutions and so on will remain the same as Firestrike Extreme. Tessellation details, these are the default settings by the way, but the GPU's memory budget is double over 1440p, which is, well, a lot. So you're going to need at least a 3 GB card, which really emphasises now the fact that, well, GPUs of 3 gigs are going to be pretty much minimalistic, and I even don't think that 4 gigs is going to last us too much longer. Now, there are a multitude of other changes that are supposedly going to be implemented, primarily to, for example, logging. There's going to be a lot of extra additional logging and command line functionality, particularly if you're using this professional edition. If you're using the regular edition, there are a couple of fixes as well. For example, identifying or monitoring hardware problems, which is good, obviously. The main point, however, of this is that this signifies, I mean, look, let's just be honest, most GPUs are not going to be able to render at 4K, Firestrike in particular, because even a really high-end card, even like the Maxwells, are not able to really push Firestrike Extreme at really decent frame rates, unless you're using like an SLI setup. The point of this is just so we've got another level, and to be honest, my personal standpoint, and certainly the standpoint of many gamers now, is, let's just be totally blunt, 1440p monitors are standard. I would already have one, apart from I'm mostly recording for YouTube and so on, and so it's kind of pointless for me. But if I was not doing that, I'm probably going to wait for 4K display, and then I'm just going to jump on it. 4K displays are coming down really quickly in pricing, and more people, if you read their specs, have 4K display. And why not, really? The problem is we're in this really weird position with GPUs where a lot of GPUs are powerful, but they're not powerful enough to run 4K with all games. So you're going to get some games that run fine at 4K, but others that just, well, suck at 4K, unless you're using an SLI setup. So really, personally, I'm waiting for Nvidia and AMD to kind of push the next generation of GPUs. Now, there's good news on the horizon. AMD are, as you probably have heard by now, working on the R9 300 series. Nvidia, of course, are pushing their own GPU, so hopefully we're going to be able to get that level of performance where 3DMark is not going to be running at 0.01 frames a second. And just to reiterate, obviously this means that VRAM usage probably won't be too much of a problem on the next generation of cards anyway. Let's face it, we've already got certain games now which are saying, hey, I'd really love it if you give me 4 gigs of RAM or even 6 gigs of RAM. So it won't be too much longer, particularly if we're dealing with like higher resolutions, until most games are going to be there. That's what happens every single generation. You either get the benchmarks which push it, or you get a couple of games like, for example, Crisis. 1 to 2 years later, all the games required that level of GPU performance to really get optimal results. With even Doom 3, it was the first one which really started to push 512 megabytes. hey, I remember 3DMark 2001 when we looked at it and we're like, bloody hell, this thing looks really impressive. Of course, it wasn't really rendering that fast on the cards that were available, but still, it looked amazing for the time. And then, of course, games, well, started to come out that really started to push and emphasize that level of performance. So that's just kind of how it is. Anyway, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care, and bye for now.